All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Movement. My name is Zoe Levine. If you're just now tuning in for the first time, welcome. We were just checking in a moment ago, and I was, like a little, hey, how you feeling? Hey, Diane, how you feeling? And she said limber, and I was like, oh, that's exciting. Right. I mean, typically, like it's middle of the workday for a lot of us. That's not the word I would expect to hear, right? Like tired or I'm tight or sticky. Like that's what I tend to expect. So limber. Oh, and then we were talking about the little baby steps, like that she's just doing, and she's worked into everything and starting to feel different in the way she's sitting. It sounds like. So bravo, and great to celebrate. In a couple of weeks, we'll do a little bit more of a definite review of everything and a little more check-in. Where are we? What are you feeling different? So the fact that you're already feeling something is amazing. And little bits like my sits bones feel like more open. Great. My shoulders feel more at ease. Great. I feel a little less, I didn't even notice, but I do feel less back pain. That's amazing. So any of those things, start to pay attention to those, whether they're tiny little things or bigger, more serious, like, oh wow, the major pain that I had is gone. Hi Nicole, hi Kelly, hi Janine, hi Tony. All right. Today, I want to start us with a little bit of a review of some things that we've done or maybe haven't done in a little while to get them back on your radar, just in case they fell off. And then I'll introduce a new idea to add to our month of the squat. All of April is kind of dedicated to how do we get a better squat, and who cares, right? And it's part of that. Right before we started our April squat month, we did that, can you get up and down from the floor? And finding that it's very hard if you haven't done it in a while, and bringing that back and saying, we're not ready to give that up. We're going to keep that and all the mechanics that's needed to get up and down and all the variety of movements. Our bodies need that. It's a vitamin. Before we get into all that, before we start our squatting, let's just sit up on those sits bones that maybe some of you are feeling. Hi, Paula. Hi, Jenny. Maybe some of you are feeling are more accessible, or you're more aware of those sits bones. So to remember, just to find them, you can kind of show a little bit more. Finding your sits bones, you can play with going from that tuck, sad puppy, which is how we hang out most of the time, right? Which is going to irritate your lumbar spine, doesn't like to be in this curve for really long periods. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of compression. And then the opposite of that is going too far and having a lot of an arch and really compressing the other direction. So going up and over your sits bones. And then kind of feel on the way, you feel kind of perched on top, and then you fall down the back, and then perch tippy top. And then you kind of fall a little bit. You don't fall far in the front, but you can get in front of your sits bones. So playing with that, and then being able to find where is the tippy top of your sits bones. And we'll spend time here for what we're working on now. Let's start with that snow globe. Remember that one? So it's like you're inside a snow globe, a dome, and you're reaching wide. And at first you're really feeling with the palms. So your shoulder blades are not scrunched up together. They're in that wide place. And you could start maybe symmetrically, just to go slow and make sure you find that widening around. It's like you're painting the inside of the snow globe, trying to find more space between your shoulder blades. Once you get the basic idea of the sensation in the back body, then you can start moving your hands to paint in different ways. You can start rotating your shoulder blades. You're still kind of looking for that reach and that support from underneath to do the raising. Instead of our usual go-to is sometimes that crunchy shoulder. Right? It's not crunchy shoulder all over the place. It's wide and lift and move from underneath. And maybe it feels good to stay symmetrical because it's easier to think about. Maybe you end up doing all sorts of different things and just being the weird person in the office, painting the room. Because it's a wake up for your shoulders. Your shoulders stay stiff and in one position. They are locked in a cage when we're doing computer work. They're also locked in a cage if you're doing repetitive motions out on the field. So break out of the cage. Just break out. No one wants to be tied up in a cage. Last thing as a reminder, Notice if your ribs are popping forward or up when you try to reach up overhead, and try to keep your ribs down. Do you remember all that kind of kidney space back here, breathing backwards? Try to keep that, and notice your arms can get tired, right? It can be work just to do that. It's a stretch, it's a strength, it's a space finder. Beautiful. And you can move your wrists. Sometimes I just like to let my arms reach wide, and then if you move your wrists around, oh, there's a lot going on there. You can move your head around a little bit. Lots of interesting pulls. So there's a lot of room to explore that one, to find space. And this could be a thinking break while you're sitting at your desk, just noticing, oh, I'm stuck in my cage. I'm going to escape that for a moment and then go back. And then you're not in a cage. It's a choice to be in that position. And then you break free. So there's that. As a reminder, everyone loves the snow globe. Questions about that one? Yeah, Diane loves the snow globe. Remember the twist. So find those sits bones again. Let's let your eyes need a break from the computer screen, from focus. So look in the distance, let your eyes wander first to one side, and let your eyes pull your head to turn. Chin can stay easily dropped. Let your head pull your shoulders to turn in your ribs, and your hips get to stay there. And your eyes are still pulling you around. And remember, we talked about that rib drop here too. So it's one long line, like a pepper grinder would stay in line. It's not like the top pops open and then you twist it. So everything stays in line. Yep. And then you can do the same thing to the other side. Your eyes lead, just to give your eyes a break. Eyes lead, that will help mess with the back of the skull and the neck there. Eyes lead pulls your head. Head pulls maybe shoulders. Ribs are dropping because they're going to want to tip back. Drop the front ribs, breathe through the back ribs, opening the space behind you. You might feel a little slouch, that's okay. And just look as far back as you can with your eyes. Let your head turn as far back as it can from your neck. And then your torso has the same thing going on. Without pulling yet, we'll do one more to the other side where you get a little pull, but warming up, just feel, it's like that. It's like wringing out a sponge, right? We talked about this as a great tool for, I just want to shake that off. Like maybe it was a hard experience, or you're just kind of in a weird headspace that day, having ways to literally shake it off or wring it out or take a new breath, right? We've played with that with breath too. Let's do one more time. This time we'll do it with a little holding. So start with the eyes just for fun. You don't always have to do it that way, but it's added bonus points. Eyes take your head takes your shoulders. And again, when you're doing this on your own, you don't have to do it this slow. But you're with me right now, so you can, and it's added detail. Once you're all the way, your eyes are looking, your head is turning, you can grab onto your chair gently. We're not shoving anything. And notice the tendency to want to pop your ribs up, drop them into that core space. So it's a core cylinder. It's all long, like a slinky would be long, not only long on one side. So the back is long as well. And just add a little something here. Breathe while you're there. Can you still find that low rib space in the back to breathe into back here? Can you still find it? It's tricky. And then unwind from that. Same thing again, start with the eyes. Let that shift what your neck feels like, and then let your head turn. See how far your head turns. Some of us are going to get stuck there. And then let the shoulders start moving. Drop those ribs. Feel breath wide through the kidney space in the back. Good. And then if you want to grab onto something and let it tease you a little further, you can. But see if you can find your breath into that kidney space even here, so you're not popping out the front. Find breath through the length of the torso, the length of the spine. This will get you a longer spine. If you feel kind of compressed and short throughout the day, if that feels nice, come back to the center and just sit tall on your sits bones, and notice maybe there's a little bit more floatiness to your spine. Anybody notice that? Maybe. Notice that. Good. All right, so that was our twist and our snow globe. Again, invitation, especially if you're in a chair for part of your day, even at a computer. That could be a quick eye break. You have a moment, you've done one task, and then moving on to the next. Maybe it's a little like flushing the system before you do another transition to another task as an idea. Any questions on the twist or the snow globe as a review? Okay, excellent. Now let's head up to everyone who's standing. Hi, Marina. Let's go up to standing for a moment and play this game. Just about the getting up and down from the floor. So get up and down from your chair a couple of times. However you usually do it, and just notice what folds, right? How hard it is. Any habits of how you do it every time. Right, you could do that a bunch and it does work something, but it's not super duper hard, I think. Try going all the way down to the floor. If the floor is not accessible to you, if you have something lower than your chair, can shift your chair to its lowest setting, you could try that. Or just try getting all the way down to the floor. Maybe you just can get to the floor, but you need some support to get there all the way down. Just the fact that you might need support to get all the way down. Do you see how that means it's a bit harder? Do you see how many folds I'm getting here? That deep fold in the hip, that deep fold in the knee and the ankle. Try a couple more times. Just notice where you're at, how hard this is, because after squat month that we're in now, this will get easier. Maybe you'll need less things to help you out. Maybe you can get all the way to the floor instead of getting close, right? Baby step it for where you're at. There's no rush. One more time, all the way down. And all the way back up. Okay. To review a couple of the things we've played with for practicing your squat and the vitamins you need in order to do a good one without actually getting all the way down into this squat, which is probably not quite accessible yet. So if you have a chair, this could work on a step too. If you just one foot on a step or a chair, if this is too high. Really, you could pick up your foot if it was too much. But the idea is, it's like a squat that you would do kind of in a fitness class, but you're doing it up here so you get into that really deep crease in the hip. We're going to stretch out those hip flexors in a second too. But it's just that play with, and notice I'm not bending forward here. It's the sit your butt back. You can have as little or as much weight in that front foot as you want. You could kind of act as if you were going to sit back and almost step up onto the chair. You're not going to. Just do it a couple times. You can play with, if you've got a broader chair surface, you could play with where you're putting your foot, how you're putting it down. And there's not a lot of weight in either. You don't have to bend this knee super deep if that bothers your knees. Just play with what feels okay for your body. Try the same thing on the other side. That sit back. It's like a baby step for finding a deeper squat. For getting the ability to get into your hips so you can get onto the floor as part of your habit, right? So it's just small. It's trying to be light and gentle on your body. Find that deep hip crease. That's it. Then last week we also played with it was combining happy hamstrings with a little bit of a squat, right? The happy hamstring squat. This is the one where your forearms could be on a desk or your hands could be pulling long away from a desk or a chair. And you just play with that tail up and finding bends here, right? Kind of bending into that hip crease, maybe shifting your weight to one foot or the other. I'm bouncing a little bit. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it's like, okay, if you bounce a little bit or bend a little bit, small bends, you can kind of feel, okay, I can feel my hips, my glutes a little bit. Just saying hi to those things, that's what you're gonna need. You could just bend and straighten a couple times. So that's a happy hamstring squat. And again, this could just be on something like this, but the whole time it's like your tail's really going back behind your shins. Just playing with that idea. It can be tiny, back behind your shins. So it's not about knees going forward, just back behind your shins. Yep, good. And then today we're gonna add, since all of the rest of the squat material is gonna involve the hips going back, or we talked about the calf stretch is very important. We'll do that before we end today. Have a seat in your chair. So all of the other stuff that we're doing is folding in this crease. I'll show you a simple way. It's like a little chair yoga. that you can open up this space, even as you're sitting in a chair. Get this way a little bit so you can see better. All you do is kind of get to the side of your chair and turn. You're almost at the front of your chair here. Better angle, right? So one leg is sitting at the front. And if it feels at all comfortable, you could start inching the other leg back. So some of you will recognize this as a yoga pose, a warrior pose perhaps, or a high lunge. You don't have to use your arms. Your arms can be stabilizing yourself on the chair. But do you feel how you can get to a place where you get that front of the thigh and hip flexor stretch, right? If you let your back crunch, like really curve and crunch, you're going to miss a little bit of that psoas. So can you, so you're trying to tuck your tail under and scoop your belly back. Notice how you get a bigger pull there. So you could stay there with hands stabilizing you. If you're there and it's feeling amazing, and the more you'll notice the more you straighten your leg, the bigger the pull is, yeah? You can play around with both. You could drop your knee and pull back your belly more. You could straighten your knee. You could take the same arm as leg that's behind you up and sideways. That might feel lovely for some of you. This is a huge stretch for sitting at a chair. Huge. And the variation is maybe less bend in the, or less straightening of the knee, not reaching as far. Find something that feels good to you. Coming back to the center, flipping to the other side. Again, there's the view here. I'm just on the front of the chair with my whole thigh. We'll see my butt. And then it's like the other leg, as you're facing sideways in your chair, the other leg can drop down. You could think about even just there, right? Pulling your belly back, tucking your tail might already get you a pull. If it feels good to slide it back further, you could go all the way to straight, and then it's almost like you're in your yoga lunge, right? Play with what feels good on your body. If you need the support of your hands, that's it. You got the support of your hands. That's all you have to do. You could stay there. You can straighten the leg. You can tuck your tail. Notice I'm giving you a million options, not to overwhelm you, but just to encourage you to feel in your body what feels decent to you. If it feels okay and stable to take an arm up and maybe even take a little bit of a side bend, great, explore that. There's a million different reaches here that you could explore, right? And it's huge. This is a huge full body stretch if it feels okay, right? Good. And come back to the center. Come up to standing once again. Just check in with how it feels to stand or walk around your space. You've done a lot to mess around with your hip crease. Notice if it just feels like you're more free. You've got freedom in your hips. Walking feels a little bit easier, hopefully. Standing might feel a little bit simpler, stacked. We talk about stacking. And then sit down on your sits bones in your chair. And see if, again, we talk about how easeful does it feel to sit perched on the tippy tops of your sits bones. The more of this work we do, not even just in this moment, but over time, this will be more of your go-to. You'll still have, all the ways that we sit and do our thing. You'll still do all that. And, yes, and your sits bones will have the capability to just perch, hang out, let things stack without having a lot of extra tension anywhere. Do you feel even a tiny difference just in today? I'm getting a lot of head nods, right? All it was a little finding the folds in your hips. They fold this way. We found a few folds, and then they open up the other way as well. We found that fold. This is your habit of the week, just in your chair, that yoga looking pose in your chair. To open up the hip flexors and the fronts of the hips, and opening up the fronts will help, the fronts of your hips and hip flexors will help get into the squat, which will also help get to the floor, which will also help us stop giving up all of those important movement vitamins that we tend to give up when we don't use them. All right, we are at time. Do any of you have any questions about any of the things we've done today or so far, or about the move of the week?
Zoe, if people do have questions or like problem areas or things they want to just pick your brain on, should I just like gather those and send them your way, or can people contact? How do you want to do that?
I would say either way. We could start off with a direct contact to me is fine. And if it gets a lot or overwhelming, then I could hand that off to you and have a little bit more of a
I think with this group of regulars, that would be awesome, because I know sometimes it's easier just go directly and not like, I don't need to know about everybody's body challenges, but I'm also happy to. Yeah. And then of course, when this group triples in size, I can gather those moving forward.
Exactly. Yeah,
I can share. I just wanted to share, just in the spirit of sharing. For me specifically, I have tight hips, so just the constant and I need a reminder. So I'm enjoying this, and absolutely the one thing I feel is just breathing better in my seat. Like I'm just right, and I just don't know why I can't keep doing that every day, because it just feels so good it just feels right. So yeah.
You have, I mean, for the daily, and especially since you're doing this as a company, having a partner in the office or someone that you work closely with on your team, that might be a really fun way to, be able to ping each other and say, hey, I'm doing my twist right now, or hey, did you do this? And kind of have you could talk really quick about, this is what I want to be doing every day. This is when I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the happy hamstrings before I sit in my chair. I'm going to do this between meetings. I'm going to do this. You could get that specific if you wanted, or just focus on one or two things at a time and say, I'm just going to do this thing every day, and here's where I'm going to put it throughout the day.
Well, I'm doing it more than I did before, so that's a good start, right?
And that's something that we all need to remember too, is everyone's doing all of these things more than you did it before. So whether it's getting on the daily or it's this weekly check-in, and that maybe, and what happens too is I think that a lot of these things sneak in more often than you think, in tiny little ways that you're like, oh, that doesn't count. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Well, you'll stretch differently, or think about something, or think about your breath, or be aware, and that doesn't count because I didn't do this specific exercise. So I'm glad you brought that up too, because everything counts. Everything counts. Showing up here counts. Being aware of your breath counts. You know what I mean?
I squatted into my freezer, and I literally thought, I'm not getting the healthiest thing out of my freezer, but I'm squatting to do it. So it literally went into my mind that way this week.
Vitamin, yes, and I have to squat to do laundry, getting into the laundry. I have to squat, getting the stuff out of the low cabinets, using those folds. That's what this is all about, and seeing where that shows up, and that counts too. That's worth celebrating. All of it is, right? Every little thing that you start to shift, it's all worth celebrating. So thank you.
That's happening. Just wanted to let you know.
Thanks for sharing, Marina. That's great.
Yeah. Really cool. All right. Well, I'll let you all go, and hopefully we'll have a little bit more of these shares at the end of every session. Maybe I'll invite a little bit more of that. Hey, I noticed this. Hey, I did this. All right.
Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you so much. Go ahead and come on over, say hi or bye before you have to run. Unmute yourself real quick. You can do it all at the same time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.